Howdy, hey peeps. We have our car on ramps and we are draining transmission fluid. Now, it was coming out a lot more a second ago, but I just want to show you that since we're on the incline going down this way, you want to loosen the bolts that are on the right hand side of the pan right there. And then so you're trying to get, the weight to push the fluid out from the bottom. So you see the bolts are out right there. Letting that drain, and then I'll take the pan off fully. Right, got the pan off, cleaned it out real good. The oil looks pretty good. It was a dark red, not too brown, so it's not so bad for about 75,000 miles. If you're using your car for police work, for taxi work, any kind of heavy traveling, you do want to change out the transmission fluid at around 70,000 miles for sure. And got the filter out, which goes up in here and it sits flat like that. I'll show you when I put it back in. Just want to make a note, when you're cleaning off this mating surface where the rubber gasket is going to sit up against, and of course the bolts go in there, use a microfiber towel, like a lint-free towel, because I used a paper towel there and you can see how there's some little bits on the edges, and you just really don't want any contamination at all in your transmission. It's even more finicky than the engine. So choose a good microfiber towel and some brake cleaner and just get it all nice and as clean as possible, and you should be good to go with your new filter and new gasket. So I'll show you that in a little bit. Alright, boys and girls, we have the filter in hand. You probably do want to make sure you got the right one. Just compare it to the old one side by side. Also make sure it's clean. Make sure your hand, when you're touching it, is as clean as possible. And if you have gloves, you're smarter than me, and hopefully you are. So I'm going to try to do this with one hand, but you see how there's some fluid right there, and again, it's not smart to get transmission fluid on your skin, but anyway, you want to rub it on the new gasket all the way around, and I'm going to do that thoroughly after I get both of my hands back, and then just it pushes in and locks in, and you're good to go. You do want to try and clean out the hole a bit too with your microfiber rag and brake cleaner too, just in case anything's up in there. But yeah, so the filter is easy. The old one pops out. Sorry I didn't show that, but it just pulls right out. Make sure that the gasket came out with it and it's not stuck up in there. And yeah, that's about it. Right, so let's measure how much fluid came out. There's the fluid. It's dark in here, so it looks darker than it actually is. Here's an old 5-quart oil bottle. Yes, I'm learning English still. So you can see it's got a clear section where it's marked off with how many quarts it is. It's just dark, so it's hard to see. So that's how you measure it. You can either pour it into the funnel like that, or if you got one of these little pumper deals, you can do that too. So that's how you measure. Alright, we are at about, let's just round it off to 3.5 quarts, because I spilled some when I was taking the pan off, and yeah, we'll call it 3.5 quarts. I'll show you later how to measure it with a dipstick that you have to buy. It's only $10 though, so not a big deal. Anyway, I'll put a link for this funnel and for this transfer pump, and on to the next. Alright, so this is the passenger front side of the pan. Sorry, I don't have much space down here. This thing up here is a connector that powers the the stuff you see on the underside of the pan is the hydraulic unit, hydroelectric unit thingy, and it has a gasket on it that you want to make sure is in good shape. So you see I'm just pushing that down as far as it will go, just counterclock, and then it should pop out, and you see that red gasket. And I'm going to clean up around there, and then I'm going to reapply some silicone grease or dielectric grease to that, and you just want that to prevent any potential water or contaminants to get in there. So definitely a good option, not mandatory, but it's smart to do it. And just make sure you put it back in, and once it goes in about that level, then you just push up on the closer, and it will just go all the way up with it, and it's tight in there. So not addressed often, but these Nagwine transmissions are very, very finicky about water, so any places that you can prevent water from getting in is a good thing. Also, another note is don't use brake cleaner when you're cleaning the gasket off of that connector right there. I wouldn't even use rubbing alcohol. That's better, but still it's not great for rubber. So what I used was actually a wash washes the paint because it's real soft, and it's even got a tiny bit of wax coating. But anyway, I made sure that was all off, and then I went and put the dielectric grease around it, or the silicone grease, and then just put it back in. It did come all the way out, but when I put it back in, it went back into the holes. There's 13 holes on it, so it's kind of scary, like, oh shit, I don't know which orientation it was in, but it kind of was form-fitted to the angle it should have been. So it went back in good. As long as it closes up good with that deal, it should mean that it's connected properly. And yeah, that's if the gasket's really bad, you're gonna need to replace it, guys. So underneath the draining pan with not very much space. By the way, those are Torx 30 bolts, or actually there's more like fasteners because they don't screw into the actual pan. Anyway, I said I was going to do a universal drain plug, and I'm feeling lazy, so I'm not going to do it. Plus, because there's not a lot of clearance between the pan and the actual hydroelectric unit in there, and I just didn't feel like measuring it out, because there's one space like right in here, because the filter's down here, so you don't want it there. But if you're going to put the drain plug, just put it like up towards the front, like right in there. Anyway, when you're putting the pan back on, just do it loose everywhere. That way you can position it correctly. That way all the little fasteners are not straining to get in their holes. Make sure they go straight, and then just tighten it, and you can really just do it snug. But the torque specs are 8 Newton meters or 71 inch-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then it doesn't really give a pattern, it just says in steps, so you could just kind of do like a star pattern or something, but I'll come back after that. Alright, we got those bolts down there torqued again to 8 Newton meters or 71 inch-pounds. Make sure you store your torque wrench on its lowest setting, not below the lowest setting, but on the lowest setting. Prolong the life of the calibration. Okay, now we've come over to the fill tube, which on the Charger does not have a dipstick. So this is the cap for it. Mine's all scuffed up because it's kind of hard to get off. Just use some channel locks, some adjustable pliers. Now again, back to keeping water out of the transmission. These are supposedly like even less than 1% of water, like 0.5% of water can damage these. So this is that fat rubber gasket on the bottom is the one that comes with it. This is a smaller one that I just rolled up over the top to try and add an extra seal to it. And I'm going to go ahead and put dielectric grease or silicone grease paste all around it, and that should hopefully keep any moisture that wants to get in there out. So again, I'm just going to rub the grease all around here, and that will be ready to put in after we fill it back up. I had 3.5 quarts come out, so I'm going to put in about 3 quarts and then just see where the level's at, because I kind of suspect that it was overfilled before, and that way I don't have to take any out. I'm using Max ATF from Royal Purple. If you're going to go ahead with this, do check and make sure that it's compatible with your transmission. It is with these Mercedes-Benz ones that are on Dodges. It wouldn't be dumb to go ahead and put the actual OEM one in there though. I just have a feeling that this is going to be a little bit better from all the reviews I've read. I've already had some in there. I mixed it with the old fluid and it seemed to start making it work better, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. I'm going to put 3 quarts of this bad boys in there. I'll put a link to this too. Alright, so that's how much grease I put around it. You don't want to do too much, just because you want to minimize the chance of it getting all in the tube there, and then when you put more fluid in, it kind of goes down into the transmission with the fluid. So just a little bit, and that should be a good water barrier. Also, you can put a little of that grease on these plastic nodules for this little engine cover. Just makes it easier to get on and off. I did it on boom boom and one in the back. So they can kind of plastic weld together on some cars. This one's made a little bit better, but I broke one of those on a Ford once because it hadn't been taken off in so long. But the plastic was a lot more brittle too, but anyway, easier. Alright, ladies and gents, we are at the point of checking the fluid level. You can't check it in park, so what you want to do is put the parking brake on, start the car, put it in reverse, make sure your car doesn't roll. This is the NAG1 specific dipstick. I'll put a link for it in the description down below. And it's about $10 unless they change the price on Amazon. But definitely go with this one if you have a NAG1 transmission. There's a dipstick that's a universal one that's much longer. It's called one of the Dorman ones, D-O-R-M-A-N. It will work, but it's just much more difficult with that because it's so long and it gets bent, and it's really difficult to know if you're hitting the bottom of the pan because it's so flexible that you can't really tell, and if you push on it, you know, it can give you an error in the reading. So this one is specifically designed to seat in there and feel it, and then we'll be able to get a proper reading. So I'm going to turn the car on. I got my parking brake on. Put it in reverse. Okay, so right now, well, I'll just show you real quick. Well, no, I won't. It's showing the actual transmission temperature right there. That's 159, or yeah, so it's about 160. Operating temperatures for me right now is about 163. You want to try to get it stable before you check it. That way you're not checking the wrong temperature. You'll see what I mean in a second if you don't know what I mean now. But anyway, let's just say it's going to stick around 160 right now. So we're going to go to the dipstick location. It's over here. I've already got the cap off. Stick it down in there. and it bottomed out, and so it did stick a little bit, but this is way easier than the other one. Let's see where we're at. I'm gonna come back and see what's going on. Alright, so both of the dipsticks are still having the same issue. This one is a little better because it's more stable and it's not as long. This is the Dorman I was telling you about before. So the problem is that it still has a lot left when you still push it all the way and it hits the bottom of the pan. And so if you push it anymore after it hits the bottom, it bends and then it gets too deep into the fluid and it's not giving you a proper level. So like as soon as you feel it hit the pan is when you stop and pull it back out. But it's a very it's kind of hard to feel, maybe more so for me. But what I figured out is just to make a mark on it when it hit bottom, so that way I know when I'm getting close to it that when I feel resistance to stop pushing, that way I get the proper reading. So you can do the same thing for the Dorman. Dorman is a bit thinner and a lot longer, so you're gonna have to be even more delicate with that, but I mean, same principle, you know, once you hit the bottom, that's when you take it back out, that way you get the proper reading. So they're both millimeter markings, and we want it to be about 60 millimeters for this nag one right here. So it goes by temperature, and mine is hovering right around 160. So you see, if you follow that 160 up over to the millimeter fluid level on the left, so it's right at 60 millimeters for 160 degrees. So that's how you figure out if you're at the right level or not. So, you know, if you're at 180, then you need your millimeter to be 70. So it would be 70 millimeters, be 180 degrees. And that's kind of the range that you want it. So minimum fill line is 60 and the max is like 70. So there's your range. I think I'm low, but I'm gonna check it one more time and I'll come back. Alright, summarizing this up, I went and checked it again a few times. It did seem a bit low, so I added some fluid, and then it looks like I jumped up to right around 60 millimeters where I needed to be for my temperature, which was about 163. That might be a little bit lower than some of your guys, but because I'm using Royal Purple transmission fluid, and that it does state that it runs a little bit lower temperature with that. But I'll put the graph that shows the temperature correlation with the millimeter in the description, and I'll also put the dipstick links. I'll probably leave out the Dorman one. You can find that on your own, but this one is called a CanSmart, and it's $10. There's an OEM tool that I found that's supposed to be the one the dealer uses, of course, but it also said that it sticks out a little bit when you go to check the temperature. So that's going to be the same result as this, as far as I'm concerned. You know, and the reason they do that is so you don't leave it in the tube and drive off and it not be a perfect seal, and there get water down the tube, and then, you know, no good for the transmission with water in there. So I would say just go with this one. If you want to try the OEM one, that's probably a smarter option, but you know, I feel like it's going to be the same as this pretty much. Go ahead and, you know, make that mark though. So like as soon as you put the stick all the way down the tube and you feel it hit, just take a felt tip pin and just mark it right on that spot. That way you know to not push past that point, and you know, then you're going to get a good reading. So I will put the temperature graph on the description too, so you can know which measurement to take, and I hope it goes good for you guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will get to it as soon as I can. Thanks, guys. See you.